So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colin Keeley. I'm the president and CEO of NeuroSigma, and I'm here to give you an overview of the company and sort of tell you about what we've been doing over the last year, which we think has been a very productive one for us. So NeuroSigma has the first ever medical device to receive an FDA label for treating attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, more specifically pediatric ADHD. The company is currently raising a Series A round for commercial launch of the technology, and the anchor investor in this round is KT, or Korea Telecom, which is actually the largest telecommunications company in Korea. Probably not a name that most of you are familiar with, but I can sort of explain how that came about. In addition to KT, we have license agreements in place with Teijin Pharma in Japan, and then Ignis Pharmaceuticals in China, which is a Goldman Sachs-backed sort of CNS startup pharma company over there. In addition to ADHD, some of you may remember NeuroSigma as a company focused on drug-resistant epilepsy. We still believe in that indication, and in fact, we received a breakthrough device designation for drug-resistant epilepsy at the beginning of 2022, but we are focused on commercializing the ADHD indication right now. And we also have blinded data in depression and some earlier data and some other indications as well. So it's a big opportunity. ADHD is about $30 billion globally. $10 billion of that is in the United States. As many of you have read in the popular press, the primary treatment for ADHD is stimulant medications. And I think maybe to drive it home a little more, when we talk about stimulants, we're generally talking about amphetamines. So one methyl group away from the drug of abuse, methamphetamine. And I would submit to you that putting your 7-year-old on a stimulant medication is a non-trivial decision for most families. So I think there is a bit of a stigma about ADHD. It's just college kids taking Adderall for finals and stuff like that. And, my background is as a physician, and I admit I even had that attitude to a certain extent before I got involved in all of this. But you got to think that no one is at the doctor's office with their 7-year-old kid because they want to put them on Adderall, right? They're there because they have a problem with their kid, not doing well in school, not doing well with their peers, whatever it is, and they're looking for a solution to that problem. So we have, and this is kind of, what I've been saying, but these medications are non-trivial, right? Side effects are the number one reason for stopping medications, and there's all sorts of bad ones. In my mind, the most significant ones, particularly for pediatric ADHD, are the loss of appetite and the personality and irritability as the child comes off the medication at night. So when you put kids on these meds, they do tend to stop eating as much, and they do not grow and gain weight at the rate of their peers. So that's a big one for a lot of families. Well, what's our solution? It is the Monarch eTNS, or external trigeminal neurostimulation system. So what we are doing is we are stimulating the V1 branch of the fifth cranial nerve, or the trigeminal nerve. The trigeminal nerve is about the thickest nerve in the body. So we think of it as a high bandwidth pathway directly into the brainstem, and then onto these regions of the prefrontal cortex that long before we came along were known to be involved in ADHD and the pathogenesis of that illness. So in one quick line, our value proposition is the efficacy of the drugs without the side effects. This is just a quick showing of the next generation device. We spent all of 2022 developing this product. We hope to launch it in Q3 of 2023. It has a much lower cost of goods, a more modern form factor than the current device that we just started rolling out. And I think another important point about it is that we're also adding a Bluetooth capability so that we can start to build on that digital health platform interface with a smartphone, make a software component to this business as well. Kind of already talked about this. Again, we are simulating the V1 branch of the trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal nerve provides sensation to the face, among some other things. It's also involved in your autonomic nervous system. It is tied up with the vagus nerve in the brainstem. And we have some pretty good evidence that part of the effect of trigeminal nerve stimulation is, in fact, a regulation of the autonomic nervous system, sort of tipping it towards that parasympathetic balance, we believe. What's the data? So we've done 2 formal clinical trials in ADHD now. One was a 24-subject open label trial, but then we also did a 62-subject double-blind randomized controlled trial. This was done at UCLA. And it's important to point out that we set this trial up exactly as you would a medication trial in this field. So same patient population, same duration of treatment, same primary endpoint, which in this case is the ADHD RS4. And what you can see is that after about 4 weeks of nightly use of our therapy, there was a very statistically significant decrease in the symptoms of children randomized to the treatment group as compared to the sham. You'll see the p-value there is a 0.005, 10 times better than the standard. But in psychiatry, another thing I had to learn getting involved in this is they often look at the effect size or the Cohen's d value. And the effect size of our treatment is a 0.5. So if you think about drugs like SSRIs, some of the most successful products out there, they tend to have an effect size of about 0.3 to 0.4. Compare that to stimulant treatment for ADHD, you're looking at 0.7, 0.8. So in psychiatry, a 0.5 effect size, which is medium, is actually quite robust because psychiatry does tend to have large placebo effects. But I think sort of the context I'm trying to put it in is that NeuroSigma is not here to say, we're replacing stimulant medications. That's all going away. No, we're here to say that we are offering parents and children an alternative to those stimulant medications. And we feel very confident there is a large unmet need for that type of product. In fact, so clinical data, as I said, my background is a physician, and I know very well that clinical data is one thing, and just because you can prove a statistically significant effect in a clinical trial does not mean you have a successful product in the real world. But one of the things that I do like about this job is that occasionally, it's almost always a mother, writes me and basically says, dear Dr. Keeley, thank you so much for this product. This is just a quote, unsolicited, I got on June 5th of this year. For me, it feels like a miracle. And basically, she's talking about how the bone density and bone growth are not being affected because her family has found this product. So there are millions of families just in this country alone who are experiencing these problems, and we can build a very, very successful business by capturing even a small fraction of that patient population. So the commercial launch. I'm not going to go through all of this. I talked briefly, we did just go through the CMS coding process. We have also got the pharmacy codes, right? So we're on, because this is sold via prescription, fulfilled through pharmacies. So it's still unclear to us exactly how this will be reimbursed, and it may be reimbursed differently depending on what insurance company we're going through. So we have that flexibility. We can work with the pharmaceutical benefit, we can work with the medical benefit. Now, in terms of the group that we have overseeing this, we have concentrated more on building people from the pharmaceutical industry. So we're working with a group of executives at BW Health, who was founded by a guy who worked at Shire, which was the largest ADHD company. And he launched drugs like Adderall XR, Vyvanse, things like that. So he's really coordinating with me on the initial rollout of this product. I alluded to this, our business model is prescription, which I think a lot of people in this room are maybe more familiar with the value proposition of wearables, the scalability of it, the ability to address traditional pharmaceutical indications. But for a lot of the world, that's still a fairly new thing. So we are a prescription-based business model. We're going to have reps visiting the doctors. We're not selling anything through a hospital like an implantable medical device. And we think that's exciting. We think that is going to allow us to scale in a way that traditional medical devices simply do not. So we have a 3-phase US launch plan. We're currently in the midst of the pilot. And so of the 3 sort of key tasks of that pilot, we've already completed 2. Just today, we issued a press release about commencing enrollment, not just initiating, we are actually enrolling 2 large double-blind trials, 375 subjects. One of them is at UCLA and Seattle Children's, and then the other one is at King's College and the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom. The purpose of those trials is label expansion. We're going to go into adolescents, and then we're also going to hopefully get an adjunctive therapy medication. And then for the UCLA Seattle Children's, we're doing some really interesting work on using things like EEG and cognitive testing to a priori predict which patients will respond to our therapy, and then also just build the database to, what I like to think of as a pharmaceutical quality database, so that no insurer in this country can reject us for lack of evidence, is essentially the idea. I won't belabor this, but I think my main point here is that we can achieve some very large volume numbers at very small penetrations of this market, right? So just like sometimes it's hard for me to even get my head around. There are 70 million ADHD prescriptions in the United States each year, okay? So even very small market fractions translate into big volumes. We also have a global strategy. This seems to have played well in Asia so far. I think it's because after World War II, when those countries were rebuilding their economy, they had a lot of problems with addiction to amphetamines, and there's therefore now a reticence to use amphetamine therapy in these children. So they're looking for these non-pharmaceutical alternatives, and we've closed a few license deals at this point, and we think we're going to close more in 2023 as well. The KT thing, I think I saw a few eyebrows go up when I said that. Why would they invest? And it's because KT has identified digital health as an area of future growth to them. And they like the idea of a handheld consumer electronics type product that on the one hand is delivering a therapy backed by, traditional double-blind trials, large trials, traditional pharmaceutical metrics, but that can also collect data as that patient interacts with the device. So a digital health platform. We think we've got a great IP portfolio, 20 issued US patents, a bunch outside the United States. We think we cover the waterfront on trigeminal nerve stimulation. We do have the pipeline I briefly alluded to. I talked about our trials we just announced about today. We have the epilepsy indication. We got a breakthrough device designation earlier in 2022. We also have blinded data in depression. I will not belabor this. It is our epilepsy data. Suffice to say, we do think, I feel very confident it is an effective therapy for this indication. We just need the capital to really run the trial to prove that. This is the team. As I said, my name is Colin Keeley. I'm the president and CEO of the company. Dr. Ian Cook, professor at UCLA, is our chief medical officer. Tom McDonnell is the gentleman, former Shire executive that I alluded to. And then we've got some other folks I've been working with for some time. So very quickly, I'm just trying to convince you that 2022 has been a great year for us. We got the 5 million Series A. We did the partnership with Ignis Therapeutics in China. That was a non-dilutive funding as well. The breakthrough device designation. Moving on, we got approval from the British version of the FDA and then the American version of the FDA to commence these two trials. We did receive our HCPCS codes permanently from CMS. 2 weeks ago in Toronto, we rolled out this product with a copay program. So basically, any patient that falls within our indication can get the system for $100 for the first month, and then it's a $40 recurring revenue out of pocket to the patient on a monthly basis. And then we're going to bother their insurance companies on the back end for the rest of our payment. So that is the presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Alan, you forgot one thing.
What did I forget?
NeuroSigma featured in the current issue of Neurotech Business Report with the vendor profile. So I don't know if you've seen it, but
I actually didn't know that.
Okay,
I would have said it if I knew.
Actually, you didn't know because it just came out.
Oh,
so
okay, fair enough.
I believe we put that in everybody. Yeah, so everybody here has access to the current issue of Neurotech Business Report. So read it. A couple of questions I want to ask, and then we'll open it to the floor. I want to follow up what you said about having codes, both pharma codes and device codes, which I think is very interesting and makes you a unique guinea pig, if I can use that term, for our industry. Now, my understanding is the pharma codes would be part of Medicare Part B, and the device codes would be Medicare Part D. It seems to me, now this is just my good feel, at least for your pediatric ADHD population, they're not that old. They're not 65 years old. So at first glance, it would seem to me to be no skin off your nose that they're saying, oh, you're only going to get $450. Yeah. Especially since, and by the way, I have a slide I wanted to share. If I can find it, I'll put that up. Sure. Of other companies who, during the debate with CMS about reimbursement rates, demonstrated that private insurers were paying much higher reimbursement values than CMS was. Right. I forget who that was, but we'll share that with you. So what I'm getting at, is it conceivable that your eggs are better put in the Part B, Medicare Part B basket, the pharma model, what's it going to take? As opposed to trying to get CMS to change their mind on DMB reimbursement rate, which is a heavy lift, as you pointed out earlier.
Yeah, it's a good question. And frankly, we just don't know how all these issues are going to play out. But I think we are fortunate. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, they say. And we're lucky that our lead product is for children and it's a replacement to Schedule II stimulant medications, right? So it's pretty easy for us to seize that moral high ground with the payers and say, wait a second, you're not going to pay us for this, non-invasive, no side effect, treatment alternative to Adderall for a 7-year-old kid, Mr. Insurance Company. And I think that's an argument that we're going to make all day long.
Yep. And potential winning hour. Okay. My second question had to do with, so early days of NeuroSigma, eTNS was your Monarch, eTNS was your first product, but there was talk of an implanted version. Is that still in the works or is that put on the back burner?
Yeah, so we do have an implanted embodiment of the device. I think that embodiment makes a lot more sense in the drug-resistant epilepsy indication than it does for, say, depression or ADHD. We went so far as to do some pretty robust animal trials of that device, but as with every startup in here, it just comes down to time and money.
Is it conceivable that you would, sell off the implanted embodiment to Medtronic or somebody else who's active in the epilepsy space while you continue to pursue the eTNS under the NeuroSigma label?
Absolutely. I mean, we're open to all reasonable offers.
Okay. All right. Questions from the audience? Oh, Emily had a question. Emily, do you want to unmute your mic and ask the question?
Yeah, hi, thank you. This is Emily at NINDS. Can you guys hear me okay?
Did we lose Emily?
No.
Are you guys
She's
able
not
to hear me?
Wait, because you're F1'd, aren't you? All right. Emily, can you hear us?
I can. Can you guys hear me? No luck?
Is it me? Do I have to F1? So you can hear her, but we can't. Well, we should be hearing.
Any luck now?
All right. Well, let's just read her question. Go ahead.
I'll do my best Emily voice. Can you say more about the choice to move from epilepsy to ADHD? Is the market size the main factor?
No, it is not a market size issue. It's a great question though. So the gentleman that invented this was an epileptologist at UCLA named Chris DiGiorgio. He did many of the original trials in vagus nerve stimulation that led to approval of that product in the late 90s. His conclusion about VNS is that it is an effective therapy, but the only way to figure out if it works is you got to do surgery, right? And so you're doing a bunch of unnecessary, expensive and invasive procedures. How could I do this in a low risk, non-invasive way? Oh, there's this other cranial nerve, the trigeminal nerve that's right beneath the surface of the skin. So he made some prototypes and started testing it in the drug-resistant epilepsy population. And again, we very strongly believe it is effective in that population, but many of them came in and were saying things like, I think I'm not as depressed. My thinking is clearer. I'm sleeping better, things like that. And so that clinical observation was taken to the Department of Psychiatry, and guys like Ian Cook, our chief medical officer, started running trials in both ADHD and depression. And then we received some very, actually, I should say the UCLA team received some very significant grants from the NIH to continue that work. And, again, maybe lucky better than good sometimes. We just got enough of a data set in ADHD that became our priority.
Great. Any other questions for Colin? All right. If not, I'd like to say thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you.
Great talk.